Well, good morning, everyone. We thank you for participating in this lunch and learn with the DNR. With the DNR, the presenter is a conservation officer, Jason McCollum. Jason was recognized by the Midwest Association of Fish of Wildlife Agencies, being selected from among officers in 13 states as a law enforcement officer of the year in 2020. He has come on talk to us about the new regulations that have come up with um, hunting and some other new things that are going on in the DNR. Thank you, Jason, for being with us.
Hi, Martha. Thank you for having me. Can everybody hear me all right?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, good. Obviously, this is not ideal, and it's probably a lot easier to have one of these in person so we can answer some more questions and get some more information out there, but I guess we'll do the best we can at this point. Can everybody see the slide screen in front of them? That wants to, I guess.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Good. All right. So some things we were going to try to talk to you or present today were just some major regulation changes here in the state of Michigan for this upcoming year. And obviously the COVID situation has changed a lot of the way everybody's doing business and within the DNR and hunting regulations in general. It has changed some things, just the way the Natural Resources Commission meets and how they're able to set regs. I'm assuming most of you that are participating in the meeting have either yourself or your friends and relatives or people obviously you're closely associated with that hunt. Probably most of them hunt deer. The only major regulation changes we wanted to make you aware of this year is for those of you that are buying deer tags, those combo licenses that you purchase, which are you get 2 tags or 2 buck tags. Those are now good for does through any season, which is the main adjustment that was made this year, which is a big deal. Those combo tags came into existence in 1995 and have had some special regulations attached with them. But this year they're good for any deer in any season, so they actually become buck and doe tags through the firearm deer season, which has never been done before, which is kind of neat. So the other things we wanted to make people aware of, state offices look like they're going to remain closed through the end of the calendar year. So any questions or on regulations, I will have my number and email address available at the end of the presentation. So if you have issues locally or just need to get a hold of a conservation officer and get some questions answered, that'll be available to you. Because the secretaries and administrative assistants that have been working at the offices have had the phones forwarded to them, but sometimes they don't always get messages in a timely manner just to the volume of calls. So hopefully help you guys out that way. The other major change this year has been the testing for CWD. For those that haven't heard, they had some of the workers in the MSU disease lab test positive for TB here within the last year, so it's kind of slowed down their testing abilities because they've lost some employees due to the TB stuff. They've since returned to work, but with the COVID closures, the lab is not running at full steam like it normally does, and we knew cost was eventually going to drive the state out of testing deer because it is a cost prohibitive measure, and they've been testing a large number of deer for the last couple of years. There's also continued, I should say, to be a need or a want for hunters to have their deer tested prior to them consuming their animals. There is still options available for that. or there are still options available, I should say. There is, if you Google, and I don't have it on the slide here, but if you were to Google CWD deer testing in Michigan, you as a hunter or your family member who harvests a deer and want to get it tested can send it up to the disease lab either in Wisconsin or at Michigan State. And for a fee, they will now test animals for hunters that just want to know if their deer is in fact CWD positive or not. So that information I can. I don't think I put that on there, but what we did do for this presentation is we put up a couple of hunting guides for your reference, just so you guys can see some of the season dates that are available in Michigan. Most of you are familiar with those, but those are there for just quick reference. Some of the issues we've been running into with the COVID closures have been the access to printable guides. Some of the retail outlets didn't get them because they went out to print late. And we just wanted to make everybody aware that those guides are available online. If you can actually Google Michigan 2020 Hunting Digest, and you can actually get a PDF copy and save it right on your phone if you needed it, or your home computer, however you wanted to do that. So all the guides are available online now as a resource for reference, and it's a pretty actually slick way to do it instead of having a paper copy if you like the phone stuff. So
There is a
there
question here. It's anything new on changing the deer hunting to the whole month of November?
Okay, looks like no, there has not been any new changing on the deer gun hunting for the whole month of November. The firearm deer season still runs the 15th to the 30th, as normal. We're not anticipating any major regulation changes, probably until the Natural Resources Commission can meet in person again. They've been slightly modifying some tagging regulations, like they did with the combo tag, but no, there has not been any movement on extending the deer gun hunting season for the whole month of November. As we get going through this too, I probably should have mentioned that at the start. If you guys, I'm assuming as we get going, people will have more questions. Just type them in there or speak up, whatever is easiest, and I'll try to pause and answer them as they come in. So one of the other main points we wanted to make today was just so everybody is aware, there are some special veterans preference hunts for those of you that are veterans or have family members that are veterans. They included a waterfowl season this year for veterans, and that was it took place on the September 19th and 20th, so it's already happened, but it sounds like this is going to continue into next year. So the only documentation you would need to participate in that hunt, if asked for, obviously, was a military ID, leave papers, duty papers, military orders, or a copy of your DD-214, or something that documents you as a veteran or active duty military personnel. So you actually have the ability now as a veteran to hunt with the children. During that 2-day youth season, it's now a veterans and active military members hunt as well, which I think is kind of a neat thing. Allows you guys to get out there with the kids and shoot a couple ducks. So the other thing we wanted to make sure you guys understood as veterans is there are now 2 hunts. There's a Liberty hunt and an Independence hunt for 100% disabled veterans, which is available to you guys on the 12th and 13th of September and the 15th to the 18th of October. So these hunts have obviously already passed. but next year, if you have an opportunity and qualify, you can look forward to those because those are special hunts that you're allowed to participate in as a 100% disability rated veteran. So just some additional opportunities for you guys to get outdoors and enjoy some time out in the woods. Where's our next slide? We're back to boating. There was some requests for some boating topics, and we thought we'd leave that one kind of open-ended because although we're at the end of the boating season, I'm not quite sure what everybody wanted to touch on me. So if somebody's on the meeting that has some boating questions, feel free to type those in and I can get those answered. The one thing I did talk about with the organizers of this event prior to us coming on live was the one thing we have seen during the COVID closures is a real spike in the number of watercraft on the waters of the state of Michigan, in particular the rivers, including the Kalamazoo and the Battle Creek. But we just wanted to make sure everybody was aware that when you're on those waters, even in high water times, which is what we had problems with this year, we had a lot of river rescues that we were toned out for, with people getting hung up in the brush and the debris due to the storms in May and June. Life jackets are still required in a kayak. And it's something that I felt was important enough, having been toned out for enough of these this year, that just so people were made aware, you need to have some sort of life jacket, be it a seat cushion or something you can grab onto, or a wearable while you're in a kayak, especially if those things tip over. Because like I say, for some reason this year, the increase in the number of people using the river systems was definitely an issue. So just make sure we're throwing life jackets in those kayaks and canoes in case they flip over, because we had a bunch of people flipping and getting stuck in the river. So any other questions in terms of boating that anybody can think of, just shoot them to us on the chat here. So any other questions? Take them over the phone or through the chat.
Yes, I have a question regarding. Go ahead.
No, please go ahead.
Oh, okay. I had a question regarding ORV tags and on vehicles, like Secretary of State registered vehicles.
Yep.
I guess I can give
when
you a
would they
scenario.
be required?
Yeah. Like say if you set a deer camp up and you have to travel down an ORV trail to get to the deer camp area, but your truck is obviously registered Secretary of State, but it is a registered ORV trail. Does that require ORV tags?
So let me ask you this. Is it an ORV trail or an ORV route? So and the reason I ask is there's a little bit of a difference in where specifically were you at, or where would you be going?
Okay, I'm not sure
what
if
part
it's
of the
route.
state?
Yeah, it's up in it's Emmett County, north of Harbor Springs.
Okay. Yep.
I believe, I think there's a map for it. It's called like Indian Garden. It's an ORV area. I'm not sure. I don't have it in front of me. Just curious if you had any input. In the past we've always just gotten them, but we were just kind of wondering if it's required.
Right. So, and you're just simply using your Secretary of State licensed vehicle. Let me ask you this, how long are you on the trail for? I mean, it's not obviously a trail ride. You're just using it to access a hunting spot, correct?
Correct. It's probably not even 100 yards off the main road, and then there's kind of actually another, I think it's a forest trail or something we're down. It's not on the ORV map like in red, so it can't be more than 100 yards.
Okay, so it's not an actual designated trail that you would be traveling on, correct?
Initially, yes. That's the confusing part. Because off the road, there's like the little mini stop sign and the trail goes through. But then we do branch off of that onto a different. It's just like an old logging road, I think.
Yeah.
So it is a short section that's designated on the map.
Yeah. So no, it would not be required on a Secretary of State licensed vehicle. There are some larger ORV routes in and around Roscommon County, St. Helen in Missaukee County, Crawford County that are designated ORV routes that are built for larger vehicles.
Gotcha.
And if you were to use your, for example, a side by side or let's say a Polaris Ranger that has a license plate on it that's street legal, but you're using it to ride on the ORV route, then it would be necessary. But where you're at, I believe that's an ORV trail, and so
Gotcha.
your Secretary of State licensed vehicle would be able to get you through that without any problems. So no, you would not need it for that.
Sounds great. Thank you very much for the answer.
Yep. I think there was another question. Oh, there's two questions that have come up. We'll answer those first, and then I think there was a verbal question too. Are the water traps legal? Mr. Is it Prado? I'm not sure what kind of water traps are you talking about there. If you could expand upon that, I could answer that question. Water traps are legal. The water trapping season down here starts in 7 days. It starts on the 10th. And then has there been an increase or decrease in CWD since the DMUs have put their plans in place? The testing that we're seeing, I don't really have a good answer for that one. CWD is still present. I think overall, the number of deer that are testing positive for CWD is relatively small compared to the total number of deer that we've been testing, and I think that is a good thing. Our issue in the state of Michigan is the pockets that have kind of sprung up are sporadic and very spread out geographically. So that's the state curious as to why we have these pockets, up in Montcalm County, Gratiot County, and Kent County, and those are kind of in the middle of the state, but southern Michigan, where a bulk of the deer are at, are not showing large numbers of CWD. And I think that's what they're still trying to get a handle on. I can tell you when they found the deer in Jackson County around Spring Arbor here last year that tested positive, they called somewhere around 100 deer within about 2 weeks after that deer testing positive, and they did not get any additional test positives. So I think the state's still trying to understand the dispersion of the disease and how widespread it is. But in terms of an actual increase or decrease, I think it stayed relatively low. And they're not really seeing any major increases or any major decreases in those numbers. So they're still, like I say, they're still trying to test as many deer as they can. The issue is becoming this year in particular, with all the issues with COVID and the restructuring of the budgets, there isn't enough money to test as many as they want because that money was transferred into other emergency funds. So that's why this year, if people outside of those core areas want their deer tested, they're now having to pay for that test on their own. That's the best answer I can give you on that one. There was another verbal question from a female, and I didn't get the whole of that question.
Hi, Officer McCullough. My question was, is it legal to feed this year, specifically the deer?
Is it legal to feed? Nope. Baiting and feeding are still illegal in Michigan as of right now. You're welcome.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, what are the rules for walking in and out of the woods with a flashlight or LED light in the brim of a hat during dark hours? Need a light to see? Absolutely. I don't think there are really any rules, unless we're referring to, is that considered shining? It's not considered shining if you're using it for the purposes of walking in and out of the woods. Another question, does the feeding include private property? It does. Yes, it does. Yep. Okay, the question is, baiting is illegal in all of Michigan. I thought it was only in certain DMUs. They did away with baiting after the CWD was confirmed in southern Michigan, and then in the UP where they found those cases closer to the Wisconsin line. So baiting right now is currently illegal in all of Michigan.
Officer McCullough, I live on a private lake, and I have hunters on one side of the lake, which is outside of the city limits, but I live on the side of the lake inside of the city limits. If the hunters shoot, for example, ducks in season and they cross the city line on the lake, are they allowed to retrieve those?
They would be, as long as you as the landowner are giving them permission to retrieve them. And that would be the issue. Hunting rights are obviously the exclusive rights of the landowner, so you would have to establish, even on a body of water, where those parcels are. And in your case, I would say if they're shooting them legally on their section or in their township line, and then the wounded animal goes onto the city property, they could legally go and retrieve it as long as the riparian owners are giving them permission. So, yes, they could.
So a follow-up to that, if the neighbors are feeding the ducks to what would appear to bring the ducks away from the hunters, is that legal for them to do that?
It would not be legal for them technically to feed the waterfowl, no.
Thank you.
Yep. Are baiting and feeding the same? Essentially, yes. The difference between baiting and feeding, I think, has been defined as the distance from the dwelling that it was. I think feeding was within 100 yards of the dwelling. Anything used for the purposes of hunting around a stand or a blind was considered baiting. And they are both currently right now in Michigan not legal. Anything else that we're seeing? Somebody else is typing, I see. The most interesting case I've been involved with, wow, that's a there have been several, I can tell you. I think one in particular case that was probably the most interesting was probably in 2013. We had complaints of a guy shooting turkeys over bait, which is illegal in Michigan. And we had rumors he was harvesting multiple turkeys, as many as 7 a year. And we had kind of got onto this complaint in the middle of the winter, I've kind of been turned on to this guy in terms of what he was doing, and we had to spend a lot of time sitting in the woods waiting for him to shoot birds. But what ended up happening is he was having his neighbors come down and shoot more birds while he was gone over an extremely large bait pile. And by the time we put that case all together, I think we ended up with 10 or 11 illegal turkeys out of it. So that was probably one of the more interesting ones because it took a lot of time to put it together. And he was actually using illegal firearms while he was turkey hunting. So it was kind of interesting because he'd been doing it for years. And we just kind of got onto him one year and were able to make a pretty solid case. All right. What are the rules for carrying a loaded firearm to and from your hunting spot? I'm assuming we're talking deer hunting here. So there are established hunting hours in all of the hunting guides. This year's hunting guide, I will find the hunting hours page. And the hunting hours page this year is on page 13. So ideally and I guess the best way to answer this question is most deer hunters I've ever come in contact with, if they park their vehicle, they load their firearm at their vehicle because they don't want to load it into the woods, or while they're in the woods because it makes noise. And then they walk into the woods with a loaded firearm, and that has never really been an issue. And then when they return from hunting, obviously the same. They don't want to unload their firearm in the woods making noise to scare deer away, so they usually unload it at their vehicle. And all those practices, for the most part, have been universally accepted as permitted. What we don't want to do is if you find deer or have deer that are out in front of your stand well after hunting hours and you don't want to get down, that's the point at which probably it's best to unload your firearm prior to exiting the stand. And obviously safety is obviously first. Some people use a rope to lift up or drop their firearm. We don't obviously think that doing that with a loaded firearm is safe, because we've had some issues before where guys have actually wrapped the rope around the trigger guard and the gun's gone off and people have gotten hurt. So obviously the safest way to do it is unloading your firearm prior to climbing up in your tree stand and climbing down. But for those that use ground blinds, sometimes they walk in and out with loaded firearms, and that is always, for the most part, like I say, been completely acceptable. The main issue is you're not out there hunting 45 minutes or half an hour after legal hunting hours, sitting in your blind trying to shoot deer late or early. That's the main reason for the hunting hours rules. So the to expand upon that answer, the technical answer would be yes. You should load your firearm at shooting hours, and then at the end of shooting hours, unload it. So like I say, sometimes people walking back to their vehicle don't want to unload their firearm in the woods, and that's understandable as well because they don't want to lose bullets or shells. So as long as you're not hunting before or after hours, actively trying to shoot animals, that's the idea. Where can we find hiking trail maps? That's a good question. I think if you Google it, it will give you the state trail hiking maps. Some of the local municipalities, be it county or township, have hiking trails where you can hike and walk. Those would obviously be available through whatever municipality is administering those trails. But for state land trails, those are available on the website. I think there's actually a hiking tab. If you click on that hiking tab, it will bring up some hiking trails, and then you can find what trails you'd like to walk. I think the main thing to remember when you're looking at hiking trails is where are the hiking trails located, are they on national forest property or in a national park, or if they're on state land, because the department administers a hiking trail system. So if the state owns it and administers it, it'll be found on the website there.
I have a question on the phone. Can you hear me?
Yep, I sure can.
Regarding coyote hunting, I know that things have changed. Could you elaborate a little bit on the restrictions and rules for coyote hunting in Michigan?
Sure. So a couple years ago, Michigan went to a year-round coyote season. So hunting for coyotes is allowed year-round. You can use pretty much any caliber weapon during the day. If you're going to hunt coyotes at night, which has kind of exploded in popularity here lately, you have to use a .269 caliber or smaller when shooting after dark.
Any bag limits on a daily basis,
Nope.
or they don't apply?
Nope. There is no limit to the number of coyotes you can shoot in a day or in a season.
Okay. This may be a touchy subject. If you don't want to comment on it, I understand. What are the numbers of reports of sightings of cougars in the state of Michigan?
The numbers of reports, I think, stay pretty steady. One thing we do see here in southern Michigan is an increase in the number of bobcats that are being sighted. I'm having several trail cam pictures sent to me throughout the course of the year of bobcats, and a lot of times, at least in southern Michigan, especially with some elderly folks that aren't used to seeing bobcats around, bobcats get mistaken for cougars. We know cougars are large, obviously much larger than a bobcat. In their home range, they tend to wander a lot. I think the most recent confirmed cougar sighting in southern Michigan was up in Bath Township, just north and east of Lansing. A guy got a great picture of one crossing the road in front of his vehicle after dark. We know they roam. Most of the cougars are displacing out of the Dakotas and Minnesota. That's where the cougars in the UP have been found genetically linked to, is those populations out there. I don't doubt that people are probably seeing a cougar or two here and there wandering through, as evidenced in the Bath Township incident. But if they're actually a viable breeding population, that's something we don't have any evidence to confirm. You know what I mean? Most of the cougars that we're seeing in Michigan are all males, and they're all looking to expand territory from what we can guess, if that makes sense.
Not that this would happen, but if you encounter a cougar, what do you advise if you're out hunting for some other game?
I would advise, if it's just wandering through, I would just let it go. But if it's something like, I think the popular video out right now is that the guy here 4 or 5 weeks ago that actually ended up in between a cougar and her mother cougar and her cubs. You know what I mean? And the cougar was actually chasing him down the trail. That's obviously a situation we hope nobody ever finds themselves in, because that cougar at that point was trying to protect her young, and that person was in a really, really bad spot. Most of the time, we just would hope that people can leave them alone and just let them do their thing. They tend to be pretty solitary animal, and they don't really like people, so generally the cougars will run away. I think that situation was unique in the fact that you generally very rarely ever encounter a cougar with her cubs, you know what I mean, in the same proximity. So the idea would be, just watch it, make sure it goes away, and then leave the area would be the best evidence, or the best advice, I should say, I can give you. And hopefully get some good pictures. Does that help?
Well, I just wondered if you felt threatened by one and it was targeting you, so to speak. If we have our weapon and we're hunting for some other game, are we allowed to defend against a potential attack?
Yes. Sure you can. Absolutely. It's no different than defending yourself against a bear or any other sort of wildlife. I can tell you generally when those instances happen, and we have had them happen before, and Michigan's been very, very fortunate. We don't have any documented cases up here up until about 2014, I think was the first documented bear attack upon a human by a wild black bear in Michigan up by the Cadillac area. Typically, if there is an instance of self-defense, obviously you're going to be able to articulate that this is what happened and this is where the animal was at, this is where I was at, and there's going to be evidence at the scene to confirm that. Does that make sense? I can't tell you we did have one guy once in Gladwin County when I was working up north. He had shot a bear during the closed season with a bow, claiming that the bear was trying to attack him up a tree. But when they went back and found the bear, it had actually been shot down through the shoulder blades. You know what I mean? Whereas if a bear was actually attacking you or coming after you up a tree, ideally you would be defending yourself with you facing the front of the bear, so the wounds weren't consistent with a defensive attack. They were consistent with the guy just was annoyed because the bear was in his bait pile at the time. So, and at that time, baiting was legal. So he was trying to just get the bear off his pile is what he was trying to do because he thought it was scaring the deer.
Okay, thanks. I don't want to dominate the time here, but I have another question or two.
Yeah, no, fire away. That's what we're here for.
I joined the call late, so I'm not doing it on the video because I had trouble with the connection, but I got in on the call and you were probably 10, 15 minutes into it. Did you share any information or numbers on the deer population herd, especially in the southwestern Michigan area earlier?
I did not. It seems to be from the last year, and I have to remember I was not here during the 2012 PhD outbreak that really got into the herd numbers quite substantially. It seems to me in my time down here since 2015, numbers have recovered quite strongly, and we're seeing a lot more deer every year that I've been down here. So numbers seem to be holding very steady, if not increasing.
Do they have any estimated numbers with that or not?
They do not. Not that I have seen so far this year. I've not been made aware of them if they have. And I think a large portion of that has to do with offices and field offices and customer service centers still remaining closed due to the COVID closures. So the biologists really haven't been doing much field work this year in particular. You said you had another question?
No, you've answered it. Thank you.
Okay. There was another question just popped up in the chat. How is the bear population in Michigan doing? Bear population in Michigan is very strong. Bear population in Michigan is very strong and continues to be strong. I think where they have seen a big increase in the bear population is up around the Cadillac, Wexford County area. That population seems to be doing very, very well. Okay, Don has it said page 51 of the 2020 guide has rules for baiting in the UP outside of the core area. So I'm going to flip to that real quick and get that question answered. They did. Okay, I see what you're saying, Don. So in the UP, they did open up baiting this year in limited amounts outside of the core area. So they did go back to that. So I apologize. You're right. Yep. Still the 2 gallons, still in a 10 by 10 area from the 15th to the 1st. So that is back to normal. And that is something that they probably just added in, and I did not see it. I apologize. Does that clear that one up for you, Don?
Is it legal to hunt from your home, as in off of a deck or a patio? Is there guidance on that?
You can hunt from your deck or patio as long as, or your home, I guess, for that matter, as long as you are doing it during normal hunting hours, or legal hunting hours, I should say, and as long as you are outside or have permission from your neighbors to discharge a firearm within their safety zone. So safety zone only applies to firearms now. For bow hunting purposes or the use of crossbows, there is no safety zone requirement anymore in Michigan. So the only thing would be if you're using a firearm, you'd have to be 450 feet or 150 yards away from occupied dwelling, outbuilding, etc. But if you get permission from your neighbors and they're within your safety zone, you could technically do it, yes.
Is archery hunting legal in the city limits?
Every municipality is different for the discharge of weapons within the city. I'm assuming you're talking here about the city of Battle Creek. And the city of Battle Creek is unique because they zone their districts different than some other municipalities. So it may technically be illegal per city ordinance, but it's not a violation of state law, if that makes sense. So if you have the ability and the property to hunt on, you could legally do that. The question would be if the city is going to enforce their city ordinances. And for the city of Battle Creek, for the most part, especially down here on the southwest side of the city, they've allowed hunting on the properties that have enough space to do so.
Thank you.
Anything else?
I just thought of another question. What is the expected harvest number for all deer season methods, whatever way you hunt? Do they have an expected number of deer to be harvested in the state of Michigan this year?
I do not know. I'm not sure at all. I think it varies randomly depending on the year. About the only thing I can add to that is this year has been so unique, given the current state of affairs because of the COVID. I think deer license sales are probably going to eventually, at the end of the year, mimic what turkey licenses did. And this is the first year that I ever remember the number of turkey licenses, some of those, limited license numbers of 48 or 50,000, whatever they were in the spring. Those licenses typically never sell out, and they did this year for the first time. So I would anticipate there's going to be more licenses sold this year, especially if we get ourselves in another closure, because people have more time. And I think that will probably add to the harvest, but how much it will add, I don't know. You know what I mean? We're seeing more people buying licenses and using the outdoors because of all the closures going on, because it's something for people to do. So I would anticipate probably an increase in license sales and probably a slight increase in the deer harvest numbers.
I had another question come to mind. Were the requirements for the hunter safety completion waived this year because of the lockdown, COVID conditions? Do you know?
Whoops, say that again. I'm sorry.
Were the hunter safety requirements waived this year because of what we're dealing with the pandemic and the closures and lockdown?
Yes, they were. So hunter safety requirements for those that have not completed a hunter safety course, they have been. And by waived, they mean they are allowing people to complete the online portion of the hunter safety course, and that is serving as their temporary hunter safety certificate. So, and that's been extended through, I believe, June of 2021. And there will be a big press release at that time saying that, you know, if you have one of these temporary hunter safety courses now, once they return to in-person learning, they're going to allow those students with those temporary certificates to go and complete their field day and then earn their official hunter safety card. So, yep, the only thing they have to do for those that aren't taking advantage of the apprentice license is complete the online portion of the hunter safety course. Yep. Does that answer that question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Two questions that popped up. Where can I learn more about cross-country skiing trails? Those are actually available right on the DNR website. If you get on michigan.gov/DNR, in the search box, if you search skiing trails, it will take you to the skiing trails portion, and you'll be able to access the maps and locations of those trails. Can you buy licenses online? That's been one of the big increases this year. Yes, buying licenses online has become extremely popular. For those that have not done it, it's relatively simple. The only thing you need to remember is you just have to allow yourself 7 to 10 days to receive those licenses in the mail for those that require a kill tag. So, for example, if I wanted to buy my deer licenses online, it takes about 2 minutes to set up an account. You can pay with a credit or debit card, and then you can select what licenses you want, and the state sends you the kill tags in the mail. I've tried this myself just to see how the system worked, and it's actually pretty slick. Usually you have them in about 5 days, not 7, but sometimes given the volume of licenses being printed, they're usually there within 7 to 10 days. So, yep, they come in a mail and an envelope. Is the link in the DNR webpage for licenses online? If yes, I believe there is a link for online purchasing there. The easiest thing to do again is go back to our friend Google, and if you just hit buy or purchase Michigan hunting license, it will take you right to the page. Anything else that we can think of? At the end of this presentation, there was my contact info. It will come back up. For those of you that can't see the slides, I can provide that information. Yep, there it is right there. It came up in the chat. So that's my direct line cell phone. That number is available to you if you have additional questions or concerns. if I don't answer, just leave me a message. Sometimes during the year, I've had a couple calls buzz in here now while we've been on the chat. So just leave me a voicemail and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And if you want to email me or if that's your preferred way, there's my email address as well.
For those of you calling in, that number is 989-205-2472, and his email is mcculughj1@michigan.gov.
Could you please repeat those?
Yep.
The phone number. Okay.
Yep. Go ahead. Nope. Go ahead.
The phone number is 989-205-2472, and the email address is mcculughj1@michigan.gov.
Thanks.
Yep.
Well, Jason, this is Kate from, oh, there's Martha.
Anybody else?
There any more questions? Well, thank you very much, Jason. I really appreciate your time. I know
No
we're
problem.
kind of few minutes early, but if there is no more questions, and I know you're probably really, really busy, so let's wait and just give it a couple more minutes, and
Sure.
we will.
Yep. Yep. No, and I'm sure somebody will probably have some questions after the presentation's over, or as they get looking at information. If they do, just get a hold of me and I'll try to get them answered as quick as I can. So.
Yes, and if they want to reach out to me, I can just put the questions together and send it to you. That's fine too.
However you guys want to do it is fine.
That's great. Yeah. Well, thank you, Jason. I really appreciate your time.
No problem.
That was
Thanks
really
for having me.
a lot of information and really, really good questions too.
Yep, I agree. Glad I could help. Like I say, any other questions, just get a hold of me and we'll try to get them answered as quick as we can. So.
Thank you,